they worked so hard, they didn't have time for family problems.
Uh-huh.
I was amazed at how hard they used to work. My dad worked at the Barnum Richardson furnace up the road here. And each morning before he went to work, he would, by hand, cut probably on a half acre of hay. And then the children would go out and we'd turn the hay over during the day so it would dry on both sides, and rake it up, and he would come in the evening after working all day at the furnaces, bring the hay in by hand, pitchfork at a time.
Wow.
We always had cows, a couple of pigs, 30 or 40 chickens, a huge garden, so that you know, they worked from sunup to sunset and raised their family, and we never felt that we were deprived of anything. We're always very happy, without running water, without indoor plumbing.
Wow.
But gee, we're all very happy.
Now, did they have a farm? It sounds like they had some land that they were working.
Well, I think the reason why the people here in the area survived the Depression was that they did have, you might call it a farm, there's only a couple of cows, but they didn't have to buy groceries, they didn't have to buy meat. You know, once a year they would slaughter the pigs, and they make enough sausage and food for the winter. The vegetables would be put in the, you know, canned, preserved, along with barrels of wine and barrels of cider. That would.
Did he make his own wine and cider?
Made his own wine. The cider, of course, was made at Ned DeLone's cider mill, so all we had to do was roll the barrels across lots. Working in the quarry, most of the stone was split by hand. The dynamite they would dynamite in the morning, and then the men would go out and with sledgehammers break the big stones into little stones, load them in dinkies, and bring them over to the hopper.
Now, your dad worked he worked at the iron furnace, so he wasn't in the quarries.
He worked at the furnace, and then he went to work for Ives and Pierce. They had a feed and coal business, and he would load the feed and coal. All of the coal came in on gondolas and would have to be unloaded by hand, the gondolas, into the sheds alongside the track. This would all be done with a shovel. And then from the shed into small 100-pound bags, put on a flat truck, delivered to a house, and carried on their back and put into the coal bin in the basement.
Wow.
And occasionally when the weather was real warm in the summertime, my dad, after he milked the cows, fed all the chickens and the pigs and everything, would go back to the railroad siding and unload coal because it was cooler to do it at night rather than during the day. And I could never understand that. It wasn't overtime. It was just convenient for him to unload that coal at night when it was cooler. Then the next day they'd go to work. You know, he would ride to work on his bicycle from East Canaan and deliver this coal, feed, and then drive home at night on his bike and take care of his little farm.
Wow.
You know, I tell you what happened. Down in Green Acres, Lawrence Rinaldi built several of those homes, as you know, with the basement underneath the house.
Yeah.
Well, one day my dad thought he would make it easy on himself. Rather than carry the coal, he backed the truck into the garage. So all he had to do was pull it off the back of the truck and dump it into the bin, not realizing that once he took all the coal off the truck, the springs went up and he couldn't get the truck out of the garage.
Oh no.
So he had to put the coal back
on. Oh no.
to get the truck out. I thought it was a big joke, you know. You think,
So all that work.
yeah.
Oh, that's awful. How old did your father live to be?
Oh, he died as he lived to be 64, but he was in very poor health because of a heart attack.
Uh-huh.
And when he was in the middle 50s, he just overworked. Everybody said he was probably one of the hardest workers we had in the community. You know, he worked so hard.
Oh, that's absolutely outrageous that anyone should work like that.
Well, I think anyone, there are quite a few men who worked, for example, with my dad, who died young because they worked so hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mr. Manasseh and so many others that just worked very, very hard. But they didn't complain about it. They expected to work this hard. They didn't say, oh, gee, I'm working too hard, I want to join the union.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were very happy to have a job, to support their family, and they just didn't mind work. They did it all their lives. Today, boy, I don't think anyone works as hard as that generation did.
No.
All right.
Now, obviously he worked so...
Built that home,
Mm-hmm.
cleared the land.
So he owned the property and...
No, he bought the property from, I think it belonged to the Sweeneys and then Mrs. Zucco.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad bought that land. And I remember he bought an acre of that land for $1,000, and we thought, what a tremendous price to pay for an acre of land, $1,000. But they cleared the land so that he could grow the hay for the cows and pasture the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
You know how hard they worked.
Mm.
You know, the soil was, in the area was very rocky.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of huge boulders. Well, you know, today they've got bulldozers and everything, but my dad would dig a big hole alongside the rock and then just flop the rock into the hole and cover it. And they did that, you know, over acres and acres. The little stones they would pick up and make stone
Mm-hmm.
walls. And if it was a medium-sized stone, they'd build a fire over it, and the heat would crack the stone, and then they'd take the small stone. And that's the way they cleared the land.
Mm-hmm.
With only about it, with a shovel and a pick is about all they had.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked very, very hard.